Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're basically going on a treasure hunt for a kind of fortune that's completely invisible. It's the engine behind some of the world's biggest companies, but a lot of the time it doesn't even show up on their balance sheets. So let's just dive right in. When you think about what a company owns, what pops into your head? Probably things like factories, right? Or equipment, or just piles of cash. But what if the most valuable thing a company owns is something you literally can't touch? I'm talking about the power of a brand, the secret recipe for a product, or the code that runs a search engine. Okay, so if these invisible things are so incredibly valuable, why are they so hard to pin down on paper? Well, to get to the bottom of that, we first have to get a handle on what they actually are. Now, accountants have a term for this stuff, intangible assets. But don't get bogged down by the jargon. All it really means is that these are resources that a company controls. And this is the important part. They expect to make money from them in the future. The catch? You can't physically hold them. And this covers a whole bunch of things. You've got legal protections, like patents for new inventions and copyrights for creative stuff. Then you've got the power of a brand name. And on top of that, there's other valuable things like customer lists or the goodwill a company gets when it buys another business. But this brings us to the real puzzle we're trying to solve today. If these things are worth billions, why do they just seem to disappear when you look at a company's official financial statements? The answer, it turns out, is buried in the weird and sometimes backward world of accounting rules. To really see how this all plays out, let's jump into a perfect example, the super high-stakes game of pharmaceutical research. Okay, get this. The odds of a new drug actually making it all the way to the market are just mind-blowing. For every 5,000 different compounds a lab might be looking at, only one, on average, will ever get approved and sold. It's an unbelievable long shot. And it's not just risky, it's an incredibly long process. It's a real gauntlet. It kicks off with basic research, then it moves to testing on animals, then years of clinical trials with humans, and only then, maybe, it gets the final approval. The whole process can easily take 12 to 15 years. So picture this. A lab spends $50 million in its first year of research. Now, you'd think that's an investment, right? An asset? Nope. Because the future payoff is so incredibly uncertain, accountants have to be conservative. They have to assume that money is just gone. So on the books, it goes down as a $50 million loss. And as the years go by, the lab keeps pouring more and more money into this project, hundreds of millions more. But on the income statement, that loss just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So on paper, the company looks like it's just burning cash, even when it might be on the cusp of a world-changing breakthrough. And then, finally, after more than a decade of work, success. The drug gets approved. It's only at this moment, when the success is finally certain, that some of the final costs, like, say, the $40 million it took to actually file the patent, can finally be put on the balance sheet as an asset. But wait, because here's where the whole story takes a really weird turn. What happens when that exact same asset, that patent we just talked about, gets sold to someone else? You see, accounting rules have this strange double standard. If you create an asset yourself, its value on your books is basically just its direct cost, which, as we saw, is pretty small. But if you buy that same asset from another company, its value is suddenly whatever you paid for it, which reflects its real market value. And this just illustrates the point perfectly. Look, on the seller's books, that patent is worth only $40 million. But then they sell it for $1 billion. And poof, magically on the buyer's books, that very same patent is now listed with its true value, $1 billion. Nothing about the patent itself changed, just who owns it. It's a wild accounting trick. Now, you might be thinking this is just some weird quirk of the pharmaceutical industry. But actually, the way accounting handles these intangible assets really changes depending on the industry's level of risk and certainty. Let's take oil exploration. An oil company gets to record its exploration costs as an asset almost right away. So why the difference? Well, it all comes down to probability. The chances of finding oil are just way, way higher than finding a blockbuster drug. And the timeline to prove you found it is just a few months, not over a decade. The level of certainty is just on a completely different planet. So why should any of this accounting stuff matter to you? Well, because understanding this little detail is absolutely essential for anyone trying to figure out what a company is really doing and how healthy it actually is. For anyone in management or investing, this knowledge is like having a pair of X-ray glasses. It allows you to look right through the official financial statements and see the real story. You start to understand a company's real risk profile. You can spot its most valuable hidden assets, and you can have much smarter conversations about where to put money for the future. And all of this leaves us with one last, really big question to think about. If a company's own books don't show its true worth, if they're often hiding the most valuable parts of the business, then how do you ever really figure out what a company is worth? It's a question every smart investor has to grapple with.